there's some concerns out there among the consumers, and these are, I'm going to call the consumers the people the utilities serve, so they're customers. And you've got the privacy thing, right? People will know when I'm home. I'm trying to get my head around that. I don't really care if people know when I'm home, but because I think they would know now because I've used Twitter too much. And I don't know. And if somebody really wanted to know when I was home, they would just park up the street, and it'd be that easy. But again, that's something that some of you are going to have to deal with. Are we going to, cell phone providers is a good example. My cell phone provider doesn't log any of your data connectivity. So if somebody subpoenas it, they just say, we don't keep that. But if you use, a different vendor, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, so I won't say who it is, but others keep it forever. And if they receive a subpoena, they happily hand it over. And that's going to be something that utilities are going to have to deal with. And the easiest thing is always if the logs aren't there, you can't hand them over. But I don't know if that works for your business model. We have this group of folks, some other concerns we've seen out there. And I want to say if anybody's here from PG&E, appreciate y'all taking it on the chin for the other utilities out there so we could get some of these studies out of the way and say there's, anybody know what electrosmog is, by the way? I'm not making fun of these people. I actually don't know what it is. If it's a real thing, I would love to know. But what I was wondering as I looked at this, and for all I know, these people have perfectly legitimate concerns. I've read, as I was putting this together, I read a lot about people that are electromagnetically sensitive and have actually dealt with that in the past in teaching a class, but that person was sensitive to plastic, and in a computer class that doesn't really work out well. But I'm wondering if if these people carry cell phones as they do this. I'm sure some of them do, and the radiation coming out of one of these is horrible. I think we saw a thing last week, was it? Somebody sent that out that showed the different measurements of, here's what a meter puts out, and here's what a cell phone puts out, and you're sticking this up by your head, and you're worried about this thing on your house. But, free country, you can...
probably smoke, too.
Oh, that's good. Smoke what? I'm just saying. I don't know. But then, that was actually supposed to be on the last slide, man. But anyway, I just looked up the phrase privacy and irony, and this was the first thing that popped up, and I thought it was pretty appropriate, because just like me, I don't want anybody to know when I'm home, yet I'm always on Foursquare, like, oh, I'm at church. Rob me now. But, I do what I can. I don't use MySpace, though, so I'm making progress. And I only use Facebook because that seems to be the only way my mother can communicate anymore. But out of these things, I think some of the things we want to come up with, I heard some folks earlier talking about, we need security standards. There's certainly a bunch of groups working on that. I'm part of a few of those groups. There isn't a standard right now. It's kind of like 4G, right? You can just, we won't say who, you can just start saying, yep, my network's 4G, and they made no infrastructure change whatsoever. But actually, they'll change something on your phone, and it'll say 4G instead of, mine says H, but whatever. And as we work on these security standards, we're going to have to continue to work together. I think the groups that have been put together, SGIP and Cybersecurity Working Group, ASAP SG that I'm a part of, I've heard great conversation on those. Collaboration between IT people, utility people, cryptography experts has been really good, pretty encouraging. Sometimes it feels like we're running on a hamster wheel and we're not really getting anything done, but at least we're talking about it, which is better than you can say for some areas of security in the country. And so concerns you all might have, we had the worm thing earlier. How separate are your systems actually? Are your implementations ever touching things they shouldn't be touching? Do you have an incident response process in place? And I mentioned incident response as kind of dear to my heart, and I would say that 80% of the places I've tested as an IT pen tester in the past had no incident handling prepared, or if they did, it was like two guys, and they knew. They knew everything. They knew exactly what to do, but nothing was written down. And if they were gone, then nobody knew what to do, and they would run around. Oh man, we'll unplug the internet quick. And obviously, with availability being key in the utility and power industry, we're not going to just go, hey, quick, unplug that hospital. It's not going to work out, or maybe it will. I don't know. Other concerns, this dude who's on the back row, he likes to grab these things. I see some other guys in the room that probably take these things apart to see what they do. That's definitely a concern. Not so much when Kevin's doing it, but when you ticked off the 18-year-old next door or whatever, and he decides to go, hey, I wonder if I can turn off Steven's lights. That's a little bit of a concern. I don't see obviously nobody's gonna shut off the electric grid with a laptop, affecting one or two people maybe, small groups. But at this point, the real big vulnerabilities in the grid I think are more physical centric than communication centric. But if we don't keep an eye on the communications that we use, then we could have the IT problem we have now, where what's it? Anonymous. When they get mad at somebody, the anonymous group, they just go and own them at will. It seems like, pick whoever they want. HB Gary, hey, you talked bad about us. Here's all your emails for the public to read. We certainly don't want to get into that. And some other concerns that I've seen, I really liked this one, because we're going to build out these things where you have like smart energy profiles in your home and your refrigerator and whatever talk to each other. And what I actually like in this one is it's perfect, because your energy app is surrounded by installed apps from the operating system above it, and around it are at least YouTube, Facebook, which is a bastion of security. I don't know what this deep sea dive thing is. Is that a game? Who really knows, right? When you install an app on your phone, who wrote that? What does it do? Are we actually taking those apart? I have an Android phone. I know that like anybody who feels like that can write an app for it, and who knows what it's doing when you install. So, I've seen these. I know some people that want to put these in homes now, and that's going to be a concern for them. How are we going to make sure that our application interacts the way it's supposed to? Other things do not interact with it and don't touch it, and that's going to be tough. And I don't envy you the process. And it'll be fun to test those kind of things, I think, as they come out, to see are these things using shared memory spaces and what's going on. Yeah, Don?
I've got a good example that one of the presenters at Houston Security Conference gave last year. And basically on the Verizon, the people who were developing apps were using the Verizon code to uniquely identify users. Well, it was like the social security number. You weren't supposed to actually use it for that. Verizon had no idea people were using it for that. And because it was shared between everybody else, and everybody was using that, if you knew those credentials, if you knew that number, and you knew just about any other information that is actively populated by these people, you could log into whichever service that you're a part of. So you don't know what's being distributed behind the scenes, and all it really takes is a proxy, which are readily available.
Right. So. Yeah, that's a great example. And isn't that fun how when we get interoperability, which you got to have, and then we want to make security with it, and it's like, hey, I figured out how to make all these things where we know who it is. And somebody said, well, but nobody asked, can anybody else tell who it is? Or can anybody else become that person via a proxy? I think that's great. We were talking with somebody that was getting ready to do these, and we said, well, how are you going to communicate, say, the energy profile back to your back office? And they said, well, we'll do it over the customer's Wi-Fi router. I was like, okay, that's cool, whatever, And somebody asked, what if they don't have one? They said, oh, we'll give them one. Like, wow, as you would get into the customer IT support business, that's bold. You may want to call Comcast and see what that's like, because you call that person at 3 in the morning, and I know everybody in here knows how to reboot their home wireless router now, right? And yet you still have to go through, okay, sir, if you could open your computer and down in the lower left-hand corner, you're like, please, it's broken, okay? But anyway, that'll be a great challenge for you all, and I don't envy you that. AMI Security's for sale. Stuck that in there. This had a nice little picture of a box next to it that kind of implied, it doesn't now, so if you look it up, it won't be there now. But it said, it had a little picture of a box, and it said, it didn't say, it just said AMI Security, this is our solution. And it had this little box that looked like, Microsoft Windows 7 comes in or something, and all this appeared to come in the box. But I don't think that's quite how that will work. And again, I think what I'm trying to get across here is that this will be a process and never a destination, and what was secure today won't be secure tomorrow, because Kevin will be taking your meters apart, and Don will be breaking your applications and your meters, and so will Robert, as he tries to keep the meters for Itron secure, and the folks from Elster and Landis and Gear. So I liked, it looks good. I think what they're offering looks great there. FIPS validated cryptography for all your Zigbee and smart energy profiles. Does anybody have all their smart energy profiles figured out yet? These dudes do. So if you need help with it, I can probably help you out. But maybe they do have a great product available, but I just found it interesting that, do you remember when the first draft of the last NISTR draft came out? Immediately everybody's like, hey, we can help you out with that, and it's like, you haven't even read that yet, come on, there's no way. It's like a budget, it's like the budget for the government, right? They're like, yeah, we're gonna let everybody read it, and all of a sudden it's approved, it's like this thick, and nobody read that, come on. But anyway, as always, don't just fall for the advertising, and remember that your security will be a process that's ongoing and not something that's ever a stamp that says, yes, you are certified and accredited to run from here on into eternity. And I think that is my last slide. Does anybody have questions, other examples of how you're dealing with this stuff? I know that's kind of, we're not in the mode of sharing these things yet as vendors or utilities and stuff. Yeah, man.
With the protesters or the electro-smog stuff, how are people handling that in terms of, if it's not a technical issue as much communications and PR, but if people say, hell no, we won't go, what do we do? Just keep the meters as is, or do you give that neighborhood?
I'm not a utility, but I'll tell you a funny story. I heard about that, and then we'll let one of the utility guys go. But I heard there was a guy, and I don't know where it was, but he said, I won't have this on my house, so they moved it to the edge of his property. And then he's like, no, that's not good enough. So they were moving it across the road. I mean, really working with this dude, right? And he comes out, and I meant to have this in here. I wasn't there, so that one of you could get it if you wanted. But he had this medallion on that protects him from, and I swear, look it up. They're $50, and it's made of some kind of nothing, probably. But it protects you from electromagnetic radiation. However, it also functions as an antenna, which seems... That's back, I don't get that. But anyway, he brought his wife out, and he was wearing one, she was wearing one. He said, look, and he took the thing off his wife, and she fell on the ground. And he was able to save her. He got the thing back on her. But that's the only story I know where the utility was doing everything they could to move that thing to the edge of the property, move it off the property. I don't know. Is there a utility that wants to speak to that? How you're going to deal with people that we don't want your fancy meter on my house?
Hi, I'm Dave Botts with Edison Electric Institute, and a lot of my members are in various stages of smart grid deployment.
Yeah.
One of the things that we rely on is we work with folks like EPRI, who actually have scientific methods of measuring energy that is emitted from smart meters. And they've published studies with data as opposed to belief sets. But if you get a hand on the studies, you see how little energy is emitted by AMI smart meter devices, particularly in contrast to, as was mentioned, cell phones. Also think microwaves, also think Wi-Fi routers, also think electric blankets.
Oh.
Seriously, I mean, the amount of energy that comes off of these smart meters is very, very low. It's very low.
I don't need to be convinced. I'm just wondering, where these people are actually amenable to science, because it's obviously, they paid $50 for this medallion, and
If you want to buy a medallion, I'll get you one too. You want one?
Now, does medallion have lead and uranium in it by any chance?
As far as I know, it's made out of tinfoil.
Maybe you could use an email.
Oh man, that went a lot of hands, so we got some medallion experts. Well, you were.
I'm Chris Doyle with the California PUC, and I'm guessing PG probably is not here. I don't believe they. Well, let me rephrase this.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm state. My views are my own, and not those of the commission.
Goodness question.
I have not seen them be amenable to the EPRI reports or others.
Well, you wouldn't expect it.
Supposed scientific.
Because they have their own reports, right?
Their own reports.
Right.
And their own reports are often tested within 6 inches of a meter.
Okay.
So anything will be outside of the FCC wireless range.
Inverse square rule doesn't apply
Yeah.
to them.
What they have repeatedly started asking for is for a non-wireless solution. So they're looking for a wired solution to the advanced meter. There's pending legislation for the California legislature that would A, put a moratorium on the smart meter rollout, and B, ask utilities to study the technology and the economic feasibility of doing a wired solution for a smart meter. So basically, we're looking at broadband over power line.
Power line carrier,
Yeah,
So,
they'll love
yeah.
that until it starts messing with their XM radio and everything else.
Yep.
yeah. They're using XM radios, like I said.
PG&E is supposed to be developing an opt-out option, much like Central Maine Power is right now. But we have not seen anything out of PG&E, and no one do know when they'll be providing.
Anybody
that.
study correlation between electro-smog protesters and anti-vaccine kind of?
I'm sure they're both centered in Marin.
Okay, we're
But one other thing I want to point out is that all these protests in California are predominantly PG territory. They're not in Edison or San Diego.
Just another thing Ed Barrow said with Elster that may be useful. Actually, just right around the advent of the widespread popularity of cell phones is when this electromagnetic sensitivity syndrome, or whatever it's called these days, became prevalent, in that people started saying, I've got this, I'm getting headaches because of, and the World Health Organization actually did a study of that some years ago, and it in turn cited some studies that were done. It seemed to be particularly in Sweden and in the UK where this was reported. The studies that the WHO have produced speak to one of the issues you alluded to, which is that measuring devices, saying, well, your current dosage is only this much, were not really recommended, that it didn't seem to be helpful. Another piece that may be useful to keep in mind is that if someone has, if one were to have a mental illness, such as schizophrenia, and perceives, I don't know, just to make up something arbitrary, giant rabbits are out to get me, just to be sorely absurd. The giant rabbits may not be real, but the pain, the difficulty that person has with that perception is, and we need to probably make sure that we keep that in mind.
Yeah, your perception is your reality. I've heard that stated before.
Just an FYI, these medallions are available in 1 and 2-sided.
Now, one of them's for nuclear energy, also. Keep RF, one's RF and one's
I'm
nuclear.
having trouble picking which 2-sided medallion to go for.
Maybe you come to me, I'll hook you up. Yeah.
Yeah, my concern would be the utilities, but we talked about the comment to make the perception is equal to your reality. What are we doing from the utility perspective in terms of awareness to the consumers?
That may be, I can't speak to that, but anybody.
I mean, these studies you have talked about, I mean, these are great studies and we know it. I mean, we are into the scientific community, but I can understand the concern that today some person is having some issues with the electromagnetic, or some studies they have read, or they have gone on Google, or they found some misconceptions. But how do you bring the reality with the consumer, yeah, this thing is safe, and we back up with the studies?
I think the answer is it speaks to the opportunity that the utilities have to consider not tactics, but strategic communications to a large community of stakeholders, from their PUC to the consumers, to the ratepayers, to the share owners or other owners, is that just like security, communications is hard, right? And you're not probably going to accidentally do a really good job at communications. you probably need to think about it and plan for it. And the issues of EMF and that type of radiation, frequency radiation, should probably be a part of a larger communications program that goes out to all of these groups.
Right.
I'm going to take one more, and then we're going to let Ido come do his thing. Andy?
I'm Andy from IBM, but this is more smart grid security blog stuff. I think, like privacy concerns, the electromagnetic concerns, we in the community have to have the science that reinforces our gut feeling that it's safe, or that it's as private as anything else out there. We have to be able to reference those documents. But this has nothing to do with science. In both the case of privacy, you can make the case that the horse has already left the barn, it's already bought and sold a long time ago via a million other things you've already subscribed to. You're not going to get any less private now. And ditto for the EMF, unless you hold the smart meter against your head and duct tape it on there. It's not really one of the top 100 things you need to worry about in your life, maybe top 1,000. So, but those groups in my part of the country, Maine, right, in California, those things are going to happen independently. So it's a really good model for utilities to get used to things like, well, what do you do if you have something like this? It seems to me like it would be nice if you could say, okay, your county just voted to not be a part of the smart grid. I don't know how practical this is, but it would be nice to sort of have them be a time capsule and say, okay, you stay where you are. The rest of the state is moving forward. I don't know if that's from a legal point of view and from a financial point of view, whether that's maintainable. But they could see the world grow up around them while their island stays locked in circa 2005 or something like that, whether it's because of privacy, electromagnetic radiation, or whatever the next flavor of fear is going to be that's going to get consumed.
I love your privacy example, because like when you verify who you are with your credit card company now, they ask you questions like, hey, which one of these 3 people do you not know? And you're like, how do you know who I know, right? So yeah, that horse has left. We're going to take about a 15-minute break.